7 years into marriage, my husband held the hand of our housekeeper's daughter and told me she was pregnant. The child was his. He looked apologetic but not by much. Let's get a divorce, he said.
Mia esse pregnant.
She just graduated college and I can't let people talk behind her back. I need to give her a proper status. I slapped the girl and angrily asked why? There are so many men out there. Her face turned red, but she didn't seem intimidated. Sister, your family has supported me for years, and I'm grateful, but love is selfish. I can't give up my love just because I'm grateful to you. Besides, you've been married to Thomas for so long without having kids. His big business needs an heir, right? I laughed coldly. Well, if she likes picking up trash, I'll let them be. But as for the family business, her child won't be inheriting that. When Thomas suggested the divorce, I had just brought out the last dish from the kitchen. It was our 7th wedding anniversary. I thought we'd have a sweet evening. I even opened a bottle of vintage wine. Mia unexpectedly came over with a cake, saying she wanted to celebrate with us. I was surprised but warmly welcomed her. Setting the last dish on the table, Thomas, sitting across from me, told me to sit down, that he had something to say. His expression was serious. Mia sat right next to him, lips a light pink, slightly swollen, cheeks flushed and fiddling with her spoon. The vibe was off. It felt like something had happened while I was busy in the kitchen. I took a moment, wiped my hands and joked, "So serious, almost feels like an official meeting." Thomas looked uneasy but kept his usual calm tone. "It's like this," he started, clearing his throat. It took him a while for the words to come out. "Linda, let's get a divorce," he finally said. I was stunned, instinctively replying, "What are you talking about? There's someone else here. Aren't you worried about being laughed at?" I was a bit annoyed at his timing for this joke. My reaction made him look uncomfortable. Glancing at a nervous Mia beside him, he continued, "I know bringing up a divorce now is sudden for you. I've been struggling with this for a long time, but I can't keep hiding it." He took a deep breath and admitted, "I'm with Mia." It was like a bomb went off in my head. "With who?" My voice raised in shock. Mia was the daughter of our former housekeeper. Her mom worked for us for over a decade to pay for her husband's medical bills. Mia was a scruffy, skinny kid. My parents felt bad and supported her education from elementary school. Even when my father's factory closed and he had debts, we continued to support her till she graduated college. To me, Mia was always a sweet, much younger girl, soft-spoken. Never did I imagine any connection between her and Thomas. I looked at both of them in disbelief. Thomas appeared resolute. He took Mia's hand, their fingers interlocked, and said, "Mia found out last week she's pregnant, and the baby is mine." With so much information to process, I didn't know how to react. Thomas couldn't meet my gaze and went on, "I know this is cruel to you, but I can't let our child be born out of wedlock. We've been married 7 years without kids and my mother has been pressuring me. It's been tough. Also, Mia's only 23, 7 years younger than me. She gave up her future to be with a married man. I can't let her down or let people judge her. I beg you to let go, let Mia and me be. I'll compensate you as much as possible in the divorce settlement." His words were like a knife to my heart. We'd avoided having kids to focus on our careers and because of my dad's factory issues. He knew all this. I was planning to talk about having kids tonight, but instead here was this surprise. Turns out, in extreme bewilderment and anger, people laugh. "Really? So how much of our assets are you planning to give me? Our company was something we built together." I asked with a smile while my nails pressed painfully into my palm. Thomas was about to speak. Mia grabbed his sleeve, interrupting. She sobbed, "Thomas, why didn't you discuss this with me before confessing to your wife? You make me look like the homewrecker." I laughed again, curious about her view of herself. Did she think the one not loved is the third wheel? Seemed like our years of supporting her education were wasted. Mia stood up and kneeled beside me. "I'm sorry, sister. No matter how I explain, you won't forgive me. It's my fault. Blame me, I couldn't help falling in love with Thomas. He's blameless in this." She cried, tears streaming, eyes red like a startled bunny. As she kneeled there, her eyes teary yet smug, I slapped her hard across the face. I hit her because I was so disappointed in her. My voice was hoarse as I asked, "Why? There are so many men in the world." Mia's face turned bright red. But she didn't back down. "Sister, your family has supported me for years and I'm grateful. But love is selfish. I can't give up my love because of gratitude. Besides, you and Thomas have been married for so long without children. Someone has to inherit all he's built, right? I was so angry my body shook. I wanted to slap her again. Thomas quickly stepped in front of Mia, taking the hit himself. He shielded her, distancing us. Linda, this is all my fault. If you want to hit or blame someone, take it out on me. Don't blame Mia. She's innocent. This scene hurt me deeply. I couldn't stop myself from mocking she's innocent. So you forced yourself on her? And yet she didn't call the cops and even wants to have your baby. You two really are a perfect match, scumbag and tramp. Mia's face turned from red to white. Her pale lips trembled. Thomas's eyes grew cold. Linda, try to have some decency. Don't be so vile. Mia is pure-hearted, nothing like you. You get yourself drunk with those businessmen to get orders and let them drape their arms around you. Who knows if you've done worse? Who's the real disgrace? His eyes were filled with venom as he spat out words from the depths of his heart. My mind buzzed, blood rushing to my head. Anger blinded me. I grabbed a glass from the table and hurled it at Thomas. It grazed his brow and shattered on the floor. Its sound louder than ever in the silence. Each shard felt like it pierced my heart. Thomas, you bastard. Thomas went pale for a second. He knew he misspoke and wanted to say more. I threw the food on the table at them. Get out. Both of you get out. I screamed hysterically. Thomas's brow was bleeding. He looked at me like I was insane. A mix of fear and anger on his face. Mia was hiding behind him, clutching her stomach in fear. Thomas's eyes were wild with rage. You're insane. Absolutely insane. I honestly don't know what I saw in you. Mia was right, you are a shrew. He grabbed Mia's hand and stormed out, slamming the door hard behind them. The slam was like a hammer hitting my heart, making it hard to breathe. A moment later, the room went quiet again. A stifling silence like an invisible mouth swallowing me whole. I felt drained of energy and collapsed into a chair. I wanted to cry, but nothing came out. My mind was a mess. The husband who once seemed so loving had finally shown his true disgusting colors. The girl my family supported for years, calling me sister, thanking me all the time, had been with my husband behind my back. Thinking of their interlocked fingers made my stomach turn, nearly making me vomit. I wanted to yell and scream, but my throat felt blocked. My heart clenched painfully. Even my teeth were chattering. I realized I had been wrong about them all along. We'd survived countless tough nights together, built everything from scratch to success. The memories of the hectic days in our small office, taking on all the work to save money, were still fresh. But now he held another woman's hand, telling me she's pregnant. The pain was deep, and it spread through my whole body. When we got married, the company was just starting and we had no competitive edge. I had to chase business myself. Even though my family had a small factory for clothing exports, it had no link to our software startup. My dad's connections wouldn't be useful in this industry. Thomas was always too proud to lower himself for business. So I took charge of the market. Thomas handled the tech and maintenance. Those years I often had to go out for business. Sometimes, to make things difficult for me, some ill-intentioned clients would insist I drink lots of alcohol. But I could handle my drinks even better than most men. In business, people generally respected each other. But there were always some who tried to take advantage of women when drunk. Sometimes I'd feel upset and rant to Thomas about it. He'd listen, his eyes turning red with empathy. He'd hold me and say he'd never let me down. But I never expected my words from back then to boomerang like this. The room was full of the smell of food. Thick sauces trickled to my feet and I stayed still. An annoying phone ring broke my train of thought. It was Thomas's mother on the caller ID. The ringing stopped, then started again 3 times. Reluctantly, I picked up. Thomas's mom's voice came through, slightly angry. Linda, what's going on? Why aren't you answering your phone? Is there something you need? I replied weakly. Tomorrow your dad needs to go to the hospital for his rehab. Don't forget and make sure to be there early, she said in her usual commanding tone. Thomas's dad had brain tumor surgery 2 years ago. His nerves were damaged, limiting his movement on one side, and his speech was slurred. He needed regular rehab at the hospital. Thomas went with him the first 2 times, but for 2 years I mostly handled it all. Thomas's mom only cared about her mahjong and dancing classes. She hired a few caregivers, but they all quit because she was too demanding. In the end, I had to step in and take over. It meant 2 hospital visits a week, plus 3 trips a week to the acupuncturist. His health is getting better little by little. For short distances, he can now walk on his own without a cane. I can't tomorrow, I'm meeting a friend for afternoon tea, I said, turning her down flat. Thomas's mom got mad. Is drinking tea more important than taking your dad to rehab? What kind of daughter-in-law are you? Thomas's mom didn't used to be like this, she used to be super nice to me. But ever since my dad's factory went bankrupt 3 years ago, I guess she thinks she can't count on my family anymore, and now has to rely on her son's support. Her attitude's gotten harsher. When I didn't respond right away, she raised her voice. I don't care what plans you have, cancel them. You must take your dad to rehab first, deal with everything else later. She was downright forceful. I took a deep breath and snapped back. Quit calling him your dad. Legally, only Thomas is obligated to take care of you guys. We're just sort of related while Thomas and I are still married. If we get divorced, what do you think you are to me? The words left her speechless. She stammered angrily before hanging up. Linda, you wait and see. This isn't over. I turned off my phone. I sat there amidst the mess for the whole night. It's kind of ironic. I was planning to celebrate 7 years of marriage with my husband, but it became the backdrop for our marriage to break apart. When the sun came up, I called for cleaning service from the building, freshened up in the bathroom, put on a dress, then planned to head to my folks' place. That's when Thomas walked in, raging. Linda, how can you be so rude? My mom is an elder, how could you say such awful things? My mind couldn't recall saying anything that bad about his mom. I ignored him going nuts and went to grab my bag and car keys. He blocked me. You're coming with me to apologize to my mom now. I brushed past him. Screw that. Grabbed my heels from the shoe rack. Thomas wouldn't let up, gripping my arm hard. Linda, the divorce is between us, don't take it out on my folks. They always treated you like a daughter. Now come with me, apologize sincerely. Treated me like a daughter? More like worked me like a dog. Apparently, that's how they treat daughters. My anger almost boiled over. I grabbed a heel, aiming it at his forehead. I'll count to 3, let go of me. 1, 2, before I could say 3. As I lifted my arm to strike, Thomas shoved my arm away and dodged. His face a picture of shock and anger. Are you crazy? You're insane. I want a divorce with a shrew like you. I composed myself and said slowly, fine, divorce it is. I want 70% of our assets. That's impossible. Thomas replied firmly. There's no reason for you to get 70%. At best, considering everything, I'll give you half. Take it or leave it. Worst case, we can go to court. I looked at him with icy disdain. Was he acting generous giving me just half? Fine then, I'll fight it tooth and nail. With that, I grabbed my things and slammed the door on my way out. 2, I drove to my parents' house but found they weren't home. I've been so busy lately. It's been over 2 weeks since I last visited. I called my dad only to find out mom's in the hospital with pneumonia from the flu. They hadn't wanted to worry me, so kept it quiet. I raced to the hospital, freaking out. By chance, I bumped into Thomas's parents in the parking lot while heading to his dad's rehab session. His dad was there in a wheelchair, giving me a glare like he wanted to cuss me out. I just sighed. I've been taking care of him for over 2 years, bringing him to appointments and on herbal visits 5 days a week. His wife and son barely lifted a finger. I miss 1 hospital trip, and he's holding it against me? You can't expect 2 decent people in a nasty family. A bunch of ingrates. Thomas's mom saw me and sneered, arms crossed. So feeling scared now? Rushing over to apologize, huh? If you get down on your knees and admit you were wrong, maybe Thomas is dad and I might forgive you. Otherwise, forget about coming into our white family home again. Like I give a hoot about entering their house. I rolled my eyes, said, if you're not right in your head, you might as well get checked today at the hospital and spare yourself some embarrassment. I turned away and headed for the elevator to the ward. Her angry shouting followed me, but I ignored it. Minutes later, Thomas called. I blocked his number right away. No doubt his mom went whining to him again. I didn't want to hear his pointless ramblings. Once he was my husband, I tolerated his parents out of love for him. Now he's just a cheating jerk, thinking I'll bow down to his folks? The elevator dinged softly, reaching the 12th floor where Mom's room was. Seeing her made my throat tighten. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were sick? You're making me feel so guilty." Mom smiled and patted my hand, telling you would just add to your worries. "The healthcare here is good, and my pneumonia isn't bad. A few days on 4 and I'll be fine." My tears spilled over uncontrollably. How can it be not serious? She's lost a lot of weight, looking all worn out, and Dad wasn't looking much better either. For this is definitely more than just a simple case of pneumonia. I made an excuse to go buy something downstairs and left the room, walking straight to the doctor's office. After speaking with the doctor, I found out that my mom was hospitalized because they found an irregular polyp in her lung. They removed the polyp in surgery, then tested it, confirming it's early-stage lung cancer. The doctor told me not to worry too much, as they've planned her treatment. They advised keeping her mentally positive and ensuring her nutrition, as this would help her recovery. After leaving the doctor's office, I crouched in the stairwell and cried for a long time. As her daughter, I didn't even know my mom was sick. She went through surgery with only my dad by her side. Meanwhile, I've been at home behaving more like a housemaid, taking care of Thomas's dad. After 7 years of marriage, what have I really gotten? I wiped away my tears and went back to the hospital room, acting as if nothing was wrong. Over the next few days, I stayed at the hospital. My mom urged me several times to go home, saying that having my dad there was enough. I knew what she meant. After all, I'm married, and she probably worried Thomas wouldn't be happy if I didn't return home. At this point, I didn't want to tell my parents I was planning to get a divorce. I just said that everything at home was taken care of, and my only focus now was her health. But what I didn't anticipate was Thomas showing up with Mia at my mom's hospital room. I don't know how they found her room number. As they walked in hand, I froze. My mom was even more shocked. Thomas awkwardly tried to pull his hand away, but Mia held on tightly. I whispered angrily to Thomas, pushing them towards the door. "If you have something to say, we'll talk at home. Don't disturb my mom here." Mia taunted me. "It's not like getting a divorce is shameful. Why do we have to go home to talk about it? I'm not even married yet, so what are you afraid of?" She raised her voice on purpose. I hissed at them. "Thomas, get your woman out of here, or I'm calling security." Mia wasn't backing down. "I came here for one thing, to ask why you're taking 70% of Thomas's assets in the divorce. The company runs because of Thomas. You're just a housewife. Everything you have is what he earned. What gives you the right to demand so much money? You think you can bully him because he's easygoing. Let me tell you, as long as I'm around, you'll never get away with it." She looked furious, as if she were the rightful wife confronting a mistress over stolen assets. Inside the room, my mom's voice rang out, tense. "Emily, are you getting a divorce from Thomas?" I pleaded quietly with Thomas and Mia. "My mom just had surgery. She can't handle this right now. Can we at least take this outside?" Just then my dad walked out of the room. His eyes quickly pieced together the scene, and he turned his steely gaze on Mia. She flinched, letting go of my clothes. My dad looked disappointed, even heartbroken. Mia had been receiving financial help from our family for years, and now she was wrecking my marriage. With cold fury, my dad spoke. "Is this how your parents raised you? Ungrateful and shameless." Mia trembled, her face flushed. She stuttered, "Uncle, feelings can't be forced. Thomas and I love each other. I'm not in the wrong. As for the money you've given me, I can pay it back." My dad just gave a cold laugh, ignoring her. He turned to me asking, "What's your plan now?" His voice was stern, but his eyes showed he cared. I let out a bitter laugh. "His woman is pregnant while I'm still his wife. What else can I do but divorce?" My dad asked pointedly, "And how are you dividing the assets?"
I replied, "I'm asking for 70%.
My dad nodded. "Makes sense. I funded the company. Giving him 30% is already generous." Mia shouted again, "Why? It's Thomas's business. Why can you take 70%? Another sharp glance from my dad shut her up, though she grumbled under her breath. My dad raised his hand and slapped her. "You ungrateful brat. This is for your mother since she didn't teach you right."
Mia stood stand.
Thomas quickly pulled her behind him. "Dad, it's not right to hit people. Let's talk this out." He sounded like a mosquito and looked intimidated. He used to be so eager to please my dad when he wanted to marry me. After our marriage, my dad gave him $300,000 to start his company. Back then, he would have crawled on his knees if necessary. My dad's voice was firm. Thomas, out of respect for your relationship with my daughter, I don't want a big scene. Take 30% and leave, or I'll use everything I have left to make your life miserable. You know I can. I won't let anyone harm my daughter. Tears welled up as warmth spread through me. Thomas, pale-faced, nodded. He knew my dad wasn't bluffing. My dad continued, have the divorce papers ready by tomorrow. If there's any trickery, you'll regret it. He paused, and about Mia repaying that money, I'll provide a detailed account tomorrow. Thankfully, I kept track. Mia swayed like she was going to collapse, but Thomas caught her. 1 month later, Thomas and I finalized the divorce. 5 According to the divorce agreement, we divided our assets. Thomas wanted the company. He suggested trading all his assets for my company shares. I of course agreed. I just wanted my 70%. He scrambled together, even borrowed over $10 million to transfer my share to me. This was more than 3 months after our divorce. Thomas temporarily rented a small place. He was waiting for his company to make a profit and bounce back. With my settlement money, I bought a new villa. I thought I'd go through a painful transition after our divorce. But there was so much going on, I didn't even have time to feel sad. I took my parents on a trip, then came back and set up the villa, planted flowers and trees. I felt like there was never a dull moment. Time flew by and months passed. By the end of the year, Mia had her babies. Twins, a boy and a girl. I didn't purposely dig for details, but Thomas threw a big party for 2 days in the square of their neighborhood, with lion dancers and social media influencers. Half the city knew. It didn't stir anything in me though. I was busy planning my business. After discussing with my dad, I decided to restart his old trade. We opened a thermalware factory and also made yoga wear. That way we could sell all year round. We focused on the domestic market. Dad had decades of experience managing factories and making clothes. I hired him as my production consultant. We poached 2 young and talented designers to build our sales team. 1 for e-commerce and 1 for offline sales. Offline, we'd partner with markets and supermarkets, while online, we supplied goods to influencers and other businesses, focusing on wholesale rather than retail. The factory ran smoothly, maybe because it was familiar territory. Unlike Thomas's software company, where each deal was tens of thousands or even millions. But clothing, being a necessity, promised steady business if managed well. Another winter came. Thanks to many influencers, our thermalware sales shot up suddenly. We kept getting more online orders. Workers had to work in shifts, and the sewing machines were running non-stop. As the new year approached, a friend came to pick out thermal clothing from my factory to gift her family elders for the new year. After choosing, she joined me in my office for some tea. During our chat, she mentioned Thomas's father had passed away a few days back. She said, "Let me tell you, Thomas's dad died the other day, and the house stunk so bad." I was shocked. Although Thomas's dad had some nerve damage and trouble moving, he was otherwise healthy. How could he just pass away like that? My friend explained they say he had bed sores all over and died in agony. Thomas left him at home and took his mom to care for Mia and the twins. His mom went home once a week, cooked a week's worth of food, and left it in the fridge for him to heat up on his own. Initially, he could move, but later, they say he was bedridden, starving and yelling at home. Then one day he just stopped. The neighbors got worried and called the police. When the police arrived, he was already dead, and the house reeked. That was truly tragic. I was dumbfounded. My friend continued, and it didn't end there. Even weirder, before they could bury the old man, Thomas's mom had already found someone new. She's been waiting for him to die. She's had a boyfriend for a couple of years. I remembered those years when Thomas's dad was sick. His mom did seem indifferent, never caring about his condition, always dressed up and going out a lot. She probably had someone then. I figured Thomas must have taken after her. I just listened without much thought. After all, whether Thomas's family lived or died was none of my business anymore. A couple of months later, Thomas came to see me. The factory guard didn't know him, and he said he was inspecting goods, so he got in after signing in at the gate. He found my office. I was discussing new spring and summer yoga wear designs with the designer when I saw him poking his head around the door, acting sneaky. Called out, "What are you doing here?" Thomas immediately put on a pleasing smile. I asked the designer to make some changes and said I'd find her later. Thomas escorted the designer to the door and then closed it. I looked at him coldly. The once confident man now looked defeated. His clothes were wrinkled and shabby. "Linda, I'm here to ask for a favor," he said. I stayed silent. He awkwardly chuckled and kept talking. "My company hit a snag. A few major contracts are expiring next month and won't renew. They found other software companies. Can you help talk to them for me? I'm willing to lower my price by 10%. So that's his plan. You can talk to them yourself. What does this have to do with me?" I mocked. He looked regretful. "Last year I upset 2 of the managers. The market hasn't been great these past 2 years. They wanted me to cut the service fee by 10% and I said no. Now that the contracts are up, they're not renewing. Who knows why, but a few other major clients stopped too. If I had known, I'd have agreed to the reduction. You negotiated these deals initially. Would you help me out? I'll make sure you get your share if it works out." What an idiot. Many software providers have willingly cut prices recently. His software company isn't like some international giant with irreplaceable systems. What did he have to be proud of? I gave a slight smile. He looked hopeful. I said, "If you're here to order thermalware, you're welcome. Otherwise, there's nothing to discuss. What you mentioned has nothing to do with me. I don't get how you have the nerve to ask me here." 6. Thinking about how he insulted me before, I reminded him, "You said yourself that business meetings are lowly activities. Why would I rush to do that?" Thomas was on the verge of tears. But I wasn't in the mood to watch his pity act, so I called security and had him thrown out. After he left, I looked at the order info from my hired manager and couldn't help but laugh. Once my clothing factory got stable, I teamed up with a friend to start a software company, but my name's not on the record. This company operates in a similar space to Thomas's. Over 2 years, I managed to hire away several capable software engineers from his company. Most of his orders have come my way too. Now he wants me to help him secure deals. Wouldn't that mean stealing from myself? 2 years later, Thomas's company filed for bankruptcy. Everything was seized, even the office furniture was taken by the loan company as payment. At that time, I had started a new relationship with a university physics professor. He's been married before too. I heard he and his ex-wife split amicably, and she stayed overseas at a research institution, got a green card and married a foreigner. We met through a mutual friend. He's a mix of awkward and witty, which seems contradictory, right? But once you meet him and chat a bit, you'll see those traits mesh perfectly in him. We don't talk much as he's busy with research, and I'm managing the factory. When he has time off, I make sure to take some time out to go places with him. After 2 years of marriage, I got pregnant. When my husband accompanied me for a prenatal checkup, we unexpectedly ran into Thomas and Mia. They were desperately chasing an ambulance while crying. There was a small boy, about 5 or 6, covered in blood on the gurney. The vehicle rushed to the ER. After the operating room doors closed, the 2 of them collapsed at the doors, sobbing hard. After my appointment, I heard people talking. They were saying a little boy had fallen out of a building and was brought to the hospital but unfortunately didn't make it. I immediately thought of Thomas and his wife running with the boy. Could it have been their son? Later, I found out what had happened. Apparently, Mia and Thomas's mom are addicted to playing mahjong. They locked the 2 kids in the house to go play. There wasn't much food at home. In the afternoon, the kids got terribly hungry and tried to call their mom, but couldn't reach her. The boy remembered from TV that you could slide down to the first floor on the tree outside. He decided to try it. Thomas's place was on the 4th floor with a tree nearby. The girl got a chair for him, but as the boy climbed up, he slipped and fell from the balcony. The girl screamed for help, and people from downstairs noticed. Neighbors called the police and opened the door, finally finding the boy in the bushes out back. They called 911 and informed Thomas and Mia. I was stunned when I heard it. A young life lost like that. It's hard not to feel sad, remembering their joyful birth times and seeing this tragic end. Later, Thomas and Mia divorced, with Thomas getting custody of their daughter. Since the son died, Mia is in a state of semi-madness, often looking for their son. Thomas drove his mother out of the house and never let her return. She had to find the man she had been seeing. However, his kids found out and were against their relationship. One day, they sneaked to a hotel, and her clothes got thrown outside by his daughter. A hotel staff finally gave her clothes left by other guests to wear home. After that incident, I heard she left. No one knows where she went. About 2 years later, while on the street, I bumped into Thomas. My husband was holding our daughter, and I was holding his arm, heading to the mall for some baby items. We ran into Thomas. He opened his mouth as if to greet me, but I just continued my conversation with my husband, giggling with my daughter, not even looking at Thomas. I think I heard sobbing behind me, but it was drowned out by my daughter's laughter. I won't look back. My happiness lies ahead. The end.